Barry Morgan, a law student with devastating good looks and a severe stutter, is determined to become formidable, not adorable. Following questionable advice, he enters the high-stakes world of mergers and acquisitions, M&A. At his internship, he meets Claire Hendricks, his cynical supervisor, who shockingly encourages him to use his stutter as a strategic advantage to make others underestimate him. Objection, Your Honor. A Love Story, Part 1. The stuttering suit, Barry Morgan, had exactly 3 things going for him when he started Columbia Law School. Devastating good looks that made people forget he was talking, a photographic memory that compensated for how long it took him to actually speak, and absolutely zero game when it came to anything requiring smooth verbal delivery. My name is Barry Morgan, and he began during his first-year orientation, standing before 200 future attorneys who were all mentally calculating how many seconds this introduction would consume. "Take your time," chirped Professor Whitmore, with the kind of focused encouragement typically reserved for toddlers learning to use the potty. Barry wanted to die. Instead, he finished his sentence, sat down, and contemplated transferring to mime school. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, blessed with a jawline that could mark glass and eyes the color of expensive whiskey. But the moment he opened his mouth, he became less smooth legal eagle and more adorable puppy trying to bark for the first time. Women would spot him across the library, tall, dark-haired, wearing glasses that somehow made him look like a young Gregory Peck, and would approach with warm intentions, only to leave 3 minutes later, either because they'd grown old waiting for him to finish a sentence, or worse, because they found his stutter adorable. Barry Morgan did not want to be adorable. Barry Morgan wanted to be formidable. "You know what your problem is?" his roommate Marcus asked one evening during their 1L year, gesturing with a lukewarm slice of pizza. "You're like a Ferrari with a hiccup. Everyone can see you're supposed to go fast, but then you just sputter," Barry offered. "I was gonna say encounter periodic velocity disruptions, but sure, let's go with sputter." "You know what you need? A new condition?" "Corporate law," Marcus announced, as if he'd just solved world hunger. M&A specifically, mergers and acquisitions. It's all about the documents, baby. You can write like the wind, and who cares if you stutter when you're mainly communicating through 17-page contracts. It was, Barry would later reflect, terrible advice that accidentally turned out to be brilliant. Part 2. The Internship Chronicles. Barry landed his 2L summer internship at Whitmore & Associates through a combination of his stellar grades, hard to penalize written exams for stuttering, his law review publication, again, writing, and an interview that went surprisingly well after the hiring partner got an emergency call 30 seconds in and told Barry to just email me your thoughts on corporate personhood. He sent a 12-page essay. He got the job. Whitmore & Associates occupied floors 40 through 43 of a Manhattan skyscraper that probably had its own weather system. The dress code was Armani or go home. The coffee was imported from some Italian region Barry couldn't pronounce even without a stutter, and the associates looked like they hadn't slept since the Clinton administration. "You must be Barry Morgan," said a voice on his first day. He turned to find a woman holding a coffee cup the size of a small bucket, wearing a suit that probably cost more than his entire law school tuition, and sporting an expression that suggested she'd already been at work for 4 hours, despite it being 7 a.m. I'm, he started. "Barry Morgan, yes, I established that. I'm Claire Hendricks, third-year associate, your supervisor for the summer, and the person standing between you and either a job offer or a career-serving coffee at the Starbucks you passed on the way in." She looked him up and down with the efficiency of a general inspecting troops. "Good God, you're attractive. That's going to be a problem." What? In litigation, sure, put the pretty one in front of the jury. But we're corporate. Our clients are other corporations. They don't care if you look like you fell out of a cologne ad. They care if you can spot a liability waiver loophole at 200 paces. She started walking, apparently expecting him to follow. Can you do that, Barry Morgan? Yes? Great. Your stutter will actually help. He nearly tripped over his own feet. It will? Sure. Makes people underestimate you. They'll think you're nervous or unsure, when really you're just processing whether to ruin their entire business model. I've been watching people underestimate you since you walked in. Henderson from litigation already pegged you as probably someone's nephew. Use it. Barry had never considered his stutter as a strategic advantage. He'd considered it as approximately 1,000,000 other things. Obstacle, inconvenience, cosmic joke, but never as an asset. Claire Hendricks, he decided, was either overwhelmed or a genius. Over the next 2 weeks, he discovered she was both. Part 3. The Education of Barry Morgan. This is the Pemberton file, Claire announced, dropping a box on Barry's desk that seemed to violate several laws of physics regarding how much paper could fit in one container. Pemberton Industries wants to acquire TechFlow, a startup that may or may not be committing securities fraud. Your job is to read all of this and tell me if we're about to facilitate a corporate marriage or accessory to a felony. By when? Friday. It was Wednesday morning. That's, he started, impossible? Welcome to corporate law, where time is a social construct and sleep is for people with better life choices. She paused. Can you handle it? Barry looked at the box, looked at Claire, whose expression suggested this was some kind of test, looked back at the box. Yes. Excellent. I'll be at my desk preparing for a deposition. If you need me, don't. If you find something that will get us all indicted, then yes, interrupt me. She left him with the box, a growing sense of challenge, and the certain knowledge that he'd somehow ended up in the world's most expensive hazing ritual. He opened the first file. 12 hours later, Barry had consumed enough coffee to fuel a small aircraft, had skipped both lunch and dinner, and had developed a newfound appreciation for whoever invented the legal doctrine of piercing the corporate veil. He'd also filled 7 legal pads with notes written in handwriting that progressively deteriorated from neat law student to doctor prescribing medication during an earthquake. Still here? He looked up to find Claire standing in his doorway, looking slightly less composed than she had that morning, which meant she looked like a normal human who'd worked a 12-hour day instead of a corporate cyborg. Found something, Barry said. That's ominous. Good ominous or bad ominous? Depends on if you consider securities fraud bad. Claire's eyes widened. Show me. Barry walked her through it. The shell company, the inflated valuations, the creative accounting that would make Enron proud. His stutter actually helped, forcing him to slow down and making each point land with deliberate weight. When he finished, Claire was quiet for a long moment. Well, she finally said, you just saved the firm from a massive lawsuit and probably saved Pemberton Industries from federal prison. Not bad for your second week. What happens now? Now, you go home and sleep, because you look like end. Tomorrow, we tell the partners, they tell Pemberton, and Pemberton either thanks us and walks away from the deal or fires us and proceeds to make terrible decisions. Either way, you did your job. She paused. Also, you're getting a job offer at the end of the summer. I'm calling it now. Really? Barry, you just read approximately 4,000 pages of mind-numbing corporate documentation and spotted a needle in a haystack while that needle was disguised as hay and the haystack was on glow. Yes, really. It was the first time anyone in law school had suggested Barry might actually be good at this. Part 4. The complication. Her name was Amanda Prescott. She was a 3L who looked like she'd stepped out of a recruitment poster for attractive people who also happened to be brilliant. And she sat down across from Barry in the library with the kind of confidence that suggested she'd never doubted herself a day in her life. You're Barry Morgan, she said. Not a question. I am. You're the 2L who's interning at Whitmore & Associates. Yes. You found that securities fraud thing in the Pemberton file. Word traveled fast, apparently. How did you? My boyfriend's a 3L at the firm. Connor Ashworth. Know him? Barry did know him. Connor Ashworth looked like he'd been genetically engineered to appear in law firm promotional materials. spoke without any inconvenient pauses or stutters, and had the kind of effortless charm that made Barry feel like a malfunctioning robot in comparison. Of course, Amanda Prescott was dating Connor Ashworth. It was like a fairy tale. If fairy tales were about intensely attractive law students who would eventually make partner at competing firms and have power couple arguments about billable hours. I've met him, Barry managed. Great. Amanda smiled, and it was the kind of smile that people probably went to war for historically. I wanted to meet the guy everyone says is going to be the next big thing in M&A, despite, she paused, and Barry could see her recalculating her sentence in real time. Being so quiet. Despite stuttering, you mean? To her credit, Amanda didn't flinch. I was trying to be polite. Most people are. Barry found himself oddly annoyed, which was new. Usually, he appreciated when people didn't point out his stutter. But something about Amanda's careful diplomacy felt worse than honesty. Look, Amanda said, leaning forward, I'm not here to be condescending. I'm here because I'm interested in M&A too, and Connor says you're the real deal. I thought maybe we could study together sometime, compare notes. You want to study with me. Is that so hard to believe? Your boyfriend might object. Amanda laughed. Connor doesn't object to anything that might advance someone's career. It's like his whole philosophy. Besides, it's just studying. Famous last words, Barry thought. Part 5, Complications Intensify. You're spending a lot of time with Amanda Prescott, Claire observed one afternoon, dropping another file on Barry's desk. This one was smaller, suggesting either a less complicated case or that Claire was feeling merciful. We're studying. Claire's expression was the legal equivalent of, I see through your bullshit. And Connor Ashworth is fine with this? They're dating. I'm aware. Everyone's aware. They Instagram their relationship like it's a documentary series. My question is whether you're aware that you're the third point in what's about to become a very messy triangle. It's not. Barry. Claire sat on the edge of his desk, which she only did when she was about to dispense wisdom or criticism. Sometimes both. You're a good-looking guy, who's brilliant at his job, and has that whole wounded intellectual thing going on with the stutter. Amanda Prescott is not spending 6 hours a week studying with you because she needs help with corporate taxation. Maybe she made law review. She doesn't need help. She needs... Claire paused. Actually, I'm not sure what she needs, which is what worries me. But Connor Ashworth is about to be a 4th year of associate here, and firm politics are complicated enough without warm drama. There's no warm... Yet, Claire interrupted. There's no warm drama yet. Keep it that way, or at least wait until after you graduate and get hired, so it's merely professionally awkward instead of professionally catastrophic. She was right, of course. Claire was always right, which was one of her more annoying qualities. The problem was that Barry was starting to really enjoy his study sessions with Amanda. She was brilliant in a way that made him want to be more brilliant. She laughed at his jokes, the ones that took him 30 seconds to deliver, which meant she was either very patient or genuinely interested. And increasingly, she looked at him in a way that had nothing to do with corporate taxation. Connor doesn't get it, she said one evening, 3 months into their study sessions. They were in a coffee shop near campus, surrounded by casebooks and the kind of overpriced lattes that Manhattan specialized in. Do you get what? This. She gestured between them. The work, the excitement of finding the right precedent or spotting the flaw in a contract. He's good at law. But he doesn't love it the way we do. He loves winning. That's different. Barry said nothing, mainly because he didn't trust himself to say the right thing. Do you ever feel like you're supposed to be with someone because they make sense on paper? Amanda continued, staring into her latte like it held answers. Like, Connor and I look right together. We're both top of our class, we're both ambitious, we both want the same kind of life. But, Barry prompted, then immediately regretted it. Amanda looked up at him, and in that moment, Barry understood why Claire had warned him. This wasn't just about studying. This had maybe never been about studying. But I don't stutter when I'm nervous, Amanda said quietly, and I think that might be a problem. Part 6. The Burst of Light. Connor Ashworth found them in the library 3 days later. Barry was explaining an obscure contract law principle. Amanda was laughing. He'd made some joke that took him 45 seconds to deliver, but apparently landed. And then suddenly, Connor was standing there looking like every rom-com boyfriend, right before he gets dumped for the quirky underdog. "Amanda," Connor said, and his voice had the kind of controlled fury that suggested he was already practicing for courtroom cross-examinations. "Can we talk?" "We're talking," Amanda replied, which was either brave or hopeless. "Hi, Connor. You remember Barry? The stutterer." "Yeah." Connor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Could have sworn you were supposed to be studying for the bar, not tutoring 2Ls. "Barry's not a—" Amanda started. I should go," Barry interjected, starting to pack up his things. "No," Amanda said firmly. "You shouldn't. Connor, if you have something to say, say it." What followed was the kind of argument that made everyone else in the library suddenly very interested in their books, while obviously listening to every word. Connor accused Amanda of having an affair. Not technically true, yet, but emotionally accurate. Amanda accused Connor of being more interested in her as an accessory than as a person. Definitely accurate. Connor made some unfortunate comments about Barry's stutter being a con game to get women's sympathy. Wildly inaccurate and incredibly offensive. That last part was what made Barry, who'd been trying to quietly disappear, stop and turn around. "You think I stutter for attention?" he asked. And his voice was so quiet that Connor had to actually stop his rant to hear him. "I think it's convenient," Connor shot back. "Poor, stuttering Barry, who everyone underestimates, and Amanda has to rescue. It's a hell of a sympathy play." Barry set down his bag, walked back to where Connor stood, all 6 feet 2 inches of lawyer in training who'd clearly never been punched in his magazine cover face. "I stuttered since I was 4, Barry said, each word deliberate. "My father mocked it. My teachers pitied it. I've had people finish my sentences, talk over me, and pretend I wasn't speaking for 20 years. So no, Connor, I don't stutter for your girlfriend's attention. I stuttered despite wanting her attention." The library had gone completely silent. Amanda was staring at him with an expression Barry couldn't quite read. Connor looked like he wanted to take a swing, but was calculating the professional ramifications. Claire, who had apparently materialized from nowhere, she had a talent for that, was watching with the air of someone observing a particularly interesting trial. "We're done here," Barry said, grabbed his bag and walked out. He made it approximately half a block before Amanda caught up with him. "Barry, wait." "Not a good idea," he said, not stopping. "Why not?" "Because your boyfriend is right." That made her stop. He stopped too, turning to face her on a Manhattan sidewalk, while about 9 million people navigated around them, with the irritation typical of New Yorkers dealing with pedestrian obstacles. "He's not right," Amanda insisted. "Not about the stutter. About me wanting your attention." Barry took a breath. "I like you, Amanda, more than I should, more than is professional or smart or any other adjective Claire would use to tell me I'm being an idiot." Amanda stared at him. "I broke up with Connor, just now, after you left." "What?" "I broke up with him, because you're right. I do like you, and he's wrong. You don't stutter for attention. You stuttered despite being someone who should have every reason to be confident, and somehow you're still braver than anyone I know." This was not how Barry had expected this day to go. "This is overwhelmed," he said. "Probably," Amanda agreed. "You're a 2L, I'm a 3L. We're both trying to get jobs at firms that have rules about relationships, and I just blew up my 3-year relationship in a library. So we should probably wait until after graduation to do anything about this," Amanda finished. "But ask me again in 8 months." She kissed him on the cheek, which caused approximately 3 pedestrians to mutter "finally" as they passed, and walked away. Barry stood there on a Manhattan sidewalk, surrounded by millions of people. and had absolutely no idea what had just happened. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Still employed, but you're buying me coffee tomorrow for the entertainment value. Also, well done not punching Ashworth. Very professional. Part 7. The Long Game. Turns out, 8 months in law school is simultaneously forever and no time at all. Barry threw himself into his work with the kind of intensity usually reserved for people trying to forget things. In his case, he was trying to forget that Amanda Prescott existed, while also being constantly reminded that Amanda Prescott existed, because they kept running into each other in the library, at firm events, and in one memorable incident, at the same coffee shop at 7 in the morning, both looking like end and running on spite. This is not avoiding each other, Barry observed. Manhattan's surprisingly small, Amanda replied, ordering something with 4 shots of espresso that the barista seemed concerned about. How's job hunting? Got an offer from Morrison and Sterling. You? Whitmore. Amanda smiled. So we'll be on opposite sides of conference tables, negotiating deals and pretending we don't have a history. Do we have a history? We never... Barry. Amanda collected her coffee. We have a history. It's just a very slow-moving, extremely well-documented, legally complex history. She left him with that thought and a caffeine headache he got just from watching her drink her order. Claire was unsympathetic when he mentioned it later. You, she said, pointing at him with a red pen like it was a tool, need to focus. We're about to graduate. You have a job offer. You're one of the top students in your class, despite, yes, I'm going to say it, despite the stutter that you've somehow turned into an asset. Do not screw this up for a woman. I'm not. I've seen you in negotiations, Barry. You're good, really good. You know why? Because you have to think before you speak. Every word is deliberate. Every pause is strategic. You don't waste time on verbal filler or unnecessary arguments. You're like a sniper, patient, precise, severe. That's a terrifying metaphor. I'm a terrifying woman. My point is, you have a gift. You can be one of the best M&A lawyers in Manhattan, but only if you don't let complications, she gave him a meaningful look, derail you. Yes, Claire. Don't yes, Claire me. I'm serious. Amanda Prescott will still exist after you make partner. The question is whether you'll exist as a successful attorney or as a cautionary tale about mixing business with feelings. Barry knew she was right. He hated that she was right, but he knew it. So he focused. He studied. He graduated second in his class. First was inevitably Amanda, because the universe had a sense of humor. He took the bar exam and passed with scores that made his mother thoughtful and his father send a card that said, "Congratulations, son," with no mention of the stutter, which was as close to approval as Barry would ever get from that quarter. And then he started at Whitmore and Associates as a first-year associate, which was like being a law student, except they paid you significantly more and expected you to never sleep again. Part 8. The Making of a Shark. Your first solo negotiation, Claire announced 18 months into Barry's tenure as an associate. She dropped a file on his desk with the ceremonial weight of someone passing on a sacred duty. Kingston Technologies wants to acquire Microdyne. Tech industry, complicated intellectual property issues. And the CEO of Microdyne is reportedly difficult. How difficult? He made his last lawyer thoughtful. Actual emotion. In a conference room. In front of witnesses. Sounds delightful. You'll do fine. Your stutter will throw him off. He'll think you're nervous. And then you'll demolish his unreasonable demands with cold, hard contract law. It'll be beautiful. I'm almost thoughtful I won't be there. Why you won't? Nope, you're on your own. Sink or swim, Morgan. The CEO of Microdyne was named Richard Torrance, and he looked exactly like someone who made lawyers thoughtful. 6'4", perpetual scowl, and the kind of focused form language that suggested he negotiated contracts through sheer intimidation. You're the lawyer? He asked when Barry entered the conference room at Kingston Technologies offices. I'm Barry Morgan, yes. Torrance's smile was not kind. They sent me someone who can't even talk straight? This is what I'm paying for? Barry set down his briefcase, pulled out his meticulously prepared contract documents, and met Torrance's eyes with the kind of calm that came from years of being underestimated. You're paying for competence, Mr. Torrance. The speech impediment is free. That landed better than he'd expected. Torrance actually laughed. Fair enough. Let's see what you've got, Morgan. What followed was 4 hours of negotiation that would, Barry later reflected, either make or pause his career. Torrance tried every tactic: intimidation, rapid glow demands, walking out twice. Barry waited calmly both times, and at one point, literally calling out about indemnification clauses. Barry responded to each tactic with patience, precision, and an increasingly creative interpretation of merger law that had Torrance's own lawyer looking impressed despite herself. "You're getting a fair deal," Barry explained during hour 3. His stutter actually working in his favor because it forced Torrance to slow down and listen. But fair doesn't mean you get everything. It means both sides get something. "I don't like compromise," Torrance growled. "No one does. But you like money, and this deal will make you a lot of it. So we can argue for another 4 hours, or we can sign and you can start counting your stock options." Torrance stared at him, then started laughing. "You know what, Morgan? I like you. You've got balls, even if you can't finish a sentence without tripping over it." Barry smiled. "I finish every sentence, Mr. Torrance. I just take the sketch route." They signed the deal an hour later. Barry walked out of that conference room having successfully completed his first solo negotiation, having not cried, a victory in itself, and having earned a reputation. Claire called him that evening. "Torrance's lawyer called our senior partner, said you were surprisingly effective and unorthodox but brilliant. Congratulations, Barry. You're officially a rainmaker." Part 9, The Shark and the Stutter. Over the next 3 years, Barry Morgan developed a reputation. He was the attorney firms called when negotiations were particularly tricky, when clients were difficult, when deals seemed impossible. His stutter, rather than being a liability, became his signature. The pause before the devastating counter-argument. The moment of silence before he found the loophole. The quiet before the storm. He won cases that should have been unwinnable. He negotiated deals that other lawyers declared inactive on arrival. He made partner at 31, youngest in the firm's history, and Claire sent him a bottle of champagne with a note that read, "I told you so. Love." Your former supervisor and current colleague who was right about everything. He dated occasionally brilliant women, beautiful women, women who were suitably impressed by his professional success and suitably patient with his stutter. None of them were Amanda Prescott, who he saw exactly 3 times over those 3 years, twice across conference room tables. She was an excellent negotiator, which was inconvenient. And once at a bar association event where they had a perfectly professional conversation that lasted 6 minutes and felt like 6 hours. "You've done well," he told her at that event. "Because what else do you say to the woman you almost had something with 3 years ago while standing in a ballroom full of lawyers?" "So have you. I've heard the stories." Amanda smiled, and it was the same smile that had made Barry realize he was in trouble all those years ago in the law school library. "The Stuttering Shark, they call you." I focus dislike that nickname. It's better than the Terror of Third Avenue, which is what they call me. That's a terrible nickname. I know, right? We should form a support group. Lawyers with unfortunate professional nicknames. They both laughed, and for a moment, it was like no time had passed at all. Then Amanda's colleague called her over, and Barry's colleague called him over, and they went back to their separate professional lives. That night, Barry sat in his stupidly expensive Manhattan apartment, the kind of place he could afford now that he was a partner pulling in 7 figures, and wondered if being successful was supposed to feel this empty. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Barry Morgan? Female voice, unfamiliar. Yes? This is Patricia Hendricks from Morrison and Sterling. We have a situation, and my colleague Amanda Prescott suggests that I call you. Part 10. The Deal. The situation, as Patricia Hendricks explained it, was this. 2 companies, both worth approximately $1 billion, both wanting to merge, both represented by lawyers who hated each other so much that negotiations had completely broken down. Morrison and Sterling represented Tech First. Whitmore and Associates represented DataCorp. And what should have been a straightforward merger had turned into a legal cage match. "We need a mediator," Patricia explained. "Someone both sides respect. Someone who can mark through the egos and the territorialism and actually get this deal done." Amanda said you were the best dealmaker she'd ever worked against. Barry processed this. Amanda Prescott had recommended him to mediate a deal between their two firms on what was probably the biggest merger of the year. I'd need to check with my partners, he said, already knowing they'd say yes. You didn't turn down the chance to mediate a billion-dollar deal. Of course, we're hoping to start next week. Barry hung up and immediately called Claire, who is now a senior partner and his most trusted advisor on all things professionally complicated. Amanda Prescott recommended you for a major deal, Claire said after he'd explained. That's either very professional or an elaborate setup for a warm comedy third act. I'm genuinely unsure which. Helpful, Claire. I'm here to ask difficult questions, not provide easy answers. Can you work with her professionally? Yes, even though you've been half in love with her for 5 years. I'm not. Barry, I've known you since you were a summer intern. You've dated approximately 7 women since law school, all of whom were perfectly lovely, and you had the thoughtful investment of someone selecting office supplies. You see Amanda Prescott across a conference room, and you light up like a Christmas tree. So I'll ask again, can you work with her professionally? Barry was quiet for a long moment. I have to, he finally said. This deal is too big to let personal feelings get in the way. Good answer. Try to believe it. Part 11. Across the table. The first mediation session was held in a neutral conference room that probably cost more per hour than most people made in a day. Tech First team sat on one side, DataCorp's team on the other, and Barry sat at the head of the table like the world's most reluctant referee. Amanda was there, naturally, looking every inch the successful attorney in a suit that probably cost what Barry's first car had cost. She met his eyes briefly when he entered, and he saw something there. Nervousness? Anticipation? Professionally appropriate acknowledgement of a former almost relationship. Before her professional mask snapped into place. Let's begin, Barry said, and launched into the mediation with the kind of confidence that came from knowing he was very good at his job, even if his heart was making things complicated. 3 hours later, he understood why this deal had fallen apart. The lawyers hated each other, professional rivalry dating back years. The CEOs didn't trust each other. One had poached the other CFO in a previous company. And the terms of the merger had been negotiated so poorly that both sides felt they were getting screwed. This is ridiculous, Barry announced, after listening to both sides argue for 90 minutes straight. You're not enemies. You're two C companies that would be stronger together than apart. But you're so busy working against about petty details that you're missing the bigger picture. Easy for you to say, snapped DataCorp's lead counsel. You're not the one whose client is getting shortchanged on stock allocation. And you're not the one whose client is taking on more liability, Barry countered. Which is why we're here to find middle ground. He spent the next 2 hours systematically dismantling every argument, finding compromises, and occasionally using his stutter to force people to slow down and actually listen to each other. Amanda watched him work with an expression he couldn't quite read, occasionally jumping in with her own suggestions that were always sharp, always helpful, and always somehow aligned with what Barry was thinking. They were, he realized, a hell of a team. Let's take a pause, Barry finally announced. Everyone, think about what we've discussed. We'll reconvene tomorrow. The room cleared except for Amanda, who was gathering her papers with the kind of deliberate slowness that suggested she wanted to talk. That was impressive, she said. You too. The point about intellectual property was brilliant. We're doing it again, Amanda observed. Doing what? That thing where we pretend we're just colleagues when we're clearly... She stopped, seemed to recalibrate. You know what? Never mind. I'll see you tomorrow, Barry. She left before he could respond. Which was probably for the best, because Barry had no idea what he would have said. Part 12, The Breakthrough. The mediation stretched from 1 day to 3, then to a week. Barry found himself spending 12-hour days in that conference room, navigating egos and contract clauses, and the increasingly complicated feelings he had about working alongside Amanda Prescott. "You're making progress," Claire observed during one of their check-in calls. "The deal, I assume. Unless you've been spending all this time making meaningful eye contact across the conference table." "Why do you torture me?" "Because someone has to, and I do it with love. How is the deal actually going?" Good, we're close. Maybe 2 more days. And Amanda is an excellent lawyer who I'm working with professionally." "And when you're not working with her professionally?" Barry didn't answer, which was answer enough. The breakthrough came on day 8, at approximately 11 p.m., when everyone was exhausted and running on coffee and spite. Barry had just proposed a compromise on equity distribution that would give both sides something to work with, and he could see both CEOs considering it. "It's fair," Amanda said into the silence, and her support carried weight. "More than fair. It's the best deal either of you are going to get." "She's right," Barry added. "We can keep negotiating, but we're going in circles. This is the deal. The question is whether you're willing to take it." The two CEOs looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication happened that Barry didn't fully understand, but recognized as significant. "Fine," said Tech First CEO. "Agreed," said DataCorp CEO. Just like that, after 8 days of negotiation, the deal was done. The conference room erupted in the kind of controlled celebration appropriate for people who bill by the hour. Handshakes were exchanged, business cards were swapped, and someone ordered champagne that probably cost more than Barry's first month of rent in law school. Barry found himself standing by the window, looking out at Manhattan at night, processing the fact that he just mediated one of the biggest mergers of the year. "Congratulations," Amanda said, appearing beside him with 2 glasses of champagne. "You did it. We did it," he corrected, taking the glass. "Fair." She clinked her glass against his. "To successful mediations and professional conduct." They drank. Outside, Manhattan glittered like it was personally celebrating their success. I've missed this," Barry said, then immediately regretted it because it was too honest. "Mediating corporate mergers? Working with you." Amanda was quiet for a moment. "We were good together, in law school, studying. And now, Amanda agreed. "Then, I'm not with Connor anymore. Haven't been for 5 years, which you know, obviously, but I'm saying it anyway. For the record." "For the record, I'm not with anyone either." "I know. I asked around, for professional reasons." "Well, what professional reasons would require knowing my relationship status?" "Due diligence?" Amanda tried, then laughed. "Okay, fine, no professional reasons. Personal reasons, because I spent the last 5 years building my career, and being successful, and winning cases, and making partner. And the whole time, I've been wondering what would have happened if I and braver in law school." Barry's heart was doing something complicated in his chest. "Braver? If I'd kissed you in the library instead of waiting 8 months, if I'd told Connor sooner that we weren't right, if I'd taken the chance instead of being responsible and professional, and all the other things we're supposed to be." "We're supposed to be those things," Barry said. "We're lawyers." "I know, but I'm tired of being supposed to. I'm tired of running into you at events and having 6-minute conversations and pretending that I don't wonder what if. I'm tired of being on opposite sides of conference tables and watching you work and thinking that we'd be unstoppable as a team." She set down her champagne glass. "So here's what I'm thinking. We're both adults. We're both successful. We work at different firms, so there's no conflict of interest. And we're both standing here in this conference room at 11:30 at night, having finally closed this deal. And I think we deserve to make one risky decision that has nothing to do with merger clauses." What kind of risky decision?" Barry asked, even though he knew, hoped, suspected what she meant. "This kind," Amanda said, and kissed him. It was the kind of soft look that made 5 years of waiting make sense. The kind of soft look that made Barry understand why people wrote poems and songs, and probably a significant number of legal briefs about this feeling. The kind of soft look that made him think that maybe, just maybe, being successful didn't have to feel empty. When they finally broke apart, Amanda was smiling. So, that happened. Yes. Professional misconduct? Probably not. Different firms. Good point. In that case, she kissed him again. And this time, Barry dropped his champagne glass, expensive but worth it, to pull her closer. Across the room, someone cleared their throat. They broke apart to find Claire, standing there with an expression that suggested she'd seen this coming from approximately 5 years away. Congratulations on closing the deal, Claire said dryly. Try not to celebrate in a way that ends up in the legal ethics newsletter. How did you... I'm psychic. Also, Patricia Hendricks texted me that you'd closed the deal and asked if I wanted to grab a drink. When I said yes, she said, good, because I think our junior partners are about to get themselves in trouble, and we should probably supervise. She's smart, that Patricia. Amanda was laughing, her hands still in Barry's. Were you conspiring? Define conspiring, Claire said. If by conspiring, you mean Patricia and I have been watching you two dance around each other for 5 years and decided to create an opportunity for you to either work through it or combust, then yes, we were conspiring. Because we're good mentors who care about our associates' professional development and personal happiness. That's definitely not what mentors are supposed to do, Barry protested. Barry, you've spent 5 years being the best M&A lawyer I've ever worked with, while simultaneously being obviously hung up on a woman you met in law school. I'm not saying I orchestrated this entire mediation to get you two in a room together, but I'm also not saying that. Now, are you going to stand here arguing with me, or are you going to take your girlfriend somewhere that isn't a conference room and celebrate like normal humans? She's not my girlfriend. Amanda raised an eyebrow at him. I'm not? We haven't discussed, Barry, Amanda interrupted. Do you want to date me? Actual dating, not professional collaboration that's secretly dating. Yes. Great. Then I'm your girlfriend. Was that so hard? Yes, Barry said honestly, which made both Amanda and Claire laugh. Epilogue. 6 months later. The New York Legal Journal ran a profile piece titled, The Stuttering Shark and the Terror of Third Avenue. Power Couple Redefines M&A Law. Barry hated the headline. Terrible nicknames, both of them. Loved the article, fair assessment of their individual achievements, and had the whole thing framed because Amanda thought it was hilarious. They'd become something of a legal legend. The two attorneys from rival firms who dated in law school, almost dated for 5 years, and were now somehow balancing relationship and career with the kind of success that made other lawyers jealous. They didn't work together often. Conflict of interest was still a thing. But when they did, they were formidable. Barry made senior partner at Whitmore and Associates and delivered an acceptance speech that took 6 minutes due to his stutter and received a standing ovation. Amanda made senior partner at Morrison and Sterling the same year and sent him a card that read, Congratulations on your promotion. Try not to let it go to your head. Love, the woman who's still better at contract law. They moved in together into an apartment that cost approximately what a small country's GDP would be. Adopted a cat that Barry insisted on naming habeas corpus. Amanda vetoed this. They compromised on Habs and had arguments about case law that sometimes turned into makeout sessions and sometimes turned into actual professional disagreements that they resolved like adults. Claire sent them a wedding gift 2 years later with a note. Saw this coming in law school. Congratulations on taking the scenic route. Love, your former supervisor and current friend who was right about everything. The gift was a framed photo of Barry from his 2L year, sitting in that conference room at Whitmore and Associates, looking overwhelmed and uncertain, and nothing like the confident attorney he'd become. I looked worried, Barry observed. You looked like someone figuring out who they were going to be, Amanda corrected. And look at you now, toughest M&A lawyer in Manhattan. devoted husband, and still stuttering through every victory. You. Worst superpower ever. Best superpower ever, Amanda corrected. It made you patient. It made you precise. It made you think before you speak, which 90% of lawyers could benefit from. And, she kissed him, it led you to me, eventually, after 5 years of unnecessary drama. Worth it, Barry said, and meant it. Outside their stupidly expensive apartment. Manhattan continued doing its thing, making deals, breaking hearts, creating lawyers, and destroying them in equal measure. But inside, Barry Morgan, once a stuttering law student who thought he'd never make it, now one of the most respected M&A attorneys in the city, sat with his brilliant wife and their cat named after a legal concept, and thought that maybe the scenic route had been exactly right. Want to review that contract for the Henderson merger? He asked, because they were still lawyers even in their downtime. Absolutely not, Amanda replied. It's 8 p.m. We're off the clock. We're drinking juice and watching terrible reality TV like normal people. We're not normal people. No, Amanda agreed, snuggling against him on their overpriced couch. We're better. We're lawyers. And really, in Manhattan, what could be better than that? The end. Barry Morgan would go on to argue before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, develop a reputation for never losing a merger negotiation, and eventually teach a course at Columbia Law School called Strategic Communication in Corporate Law, where he turned his stutter into a teaching tool about the power of deliberate speech. Amanda Prescott would become the youngest managing partner in Morrison & Sterling's history, co-write a textbook on M&A law, and occasionally oppose her husband in negotiations, which they both found professionally stimulating and personally hilarious. They had 2 children who did not inherit the stutter, but did inherit their parents' argumentative tendencies and love of contract law. Claire Hendricks served as godmother to both children and took full credit for the entire relationship, which no one disputed because it was probably true. Connor Ashworth married a corporate litigator, made partner at a firm in Connecticut, and occasionally saw Amanda and Barry at legal conferences where everyone was intensely civil. And Manhattan continued to be Manhattan, expensive, demanding, and full of stuttering law students who would eventually become sharks. I love making these videos for you. If you liked this story, then please like, subscribe to my channel, and switch on the notifications for more entertaining stories. Please also leave a comment for any story suggestions.